She's Got Next, Virginia edition. We are so excited tonight that Higher Heights for America, the political home for Black women, a place for us to be informed, engaged, and to take action, to mobilize and to elect Black women. And so this is the second in a members only series. And so for the members across the country who are joining us in our in-Zoom audience, make some chat noise and let us know where you are tuning in from. And for those who are watching across our live streams, let us know where you're watching and drop into the chat. But Higher Heights is on the road to elect more Black women on the statewide executive levels. And tonight, we're stopping virtually in Virginia and an eye on the lieutenant governor's race. We are excited to speak to yet another Black woman who has stepped off the sidelines, boldly running to make her story in Virginia as the first woman lieutenant governor. So this evening, we want this to be interactive. And so we're going to be in a conversation with a trailblazer, an amazing elected woman who has lived experiences and qualifications to lead day one. And so if you have a question, drop it into the Q&A function or in the so that we can hear from our members. So who are we talking to tonight? No other than Hala Ayala. And you do not want to miss this. So share this with your network. And if you're posting on social media, make sure you tag at Higher Heights, at Higher Height Pack, at Higher Height, no S, Pack, and use the hashtag She's Got Next. So on June 8th, 2021, the Democratic primary will take place in Virginia to determine which candidate will earn the right to run as the party's nominee in the state's lieutenant governor's election in November of 2021. Tonight, we are speaking with one of those candidates. Hala Ayala has built a career as a single working mom. For over 20 years as a cybersecurity specialist with the Department of Homeland Security, she's worked to protect our nation's information system and prevent attacks on our national security. And in 2013, Hala completed her college degree online while working full-time. From the PTA to serving on a statewide women's advocacy group, serving on the then Governor McAuliffe's Council of Women, Hala has worked hard on progressive issues that center women, women of color, and Black women. And in 2017, she helped to organize the first Women's March in Washington, seeing millions of women step up against division and hate inspired her to run for office herself. So she ran in the Virginia's 51st House District, and guess what, y'all? She ran and won against a 4-year Republican incumbent in a diverse and fastly growing suburbs of Prince Williams County, where she now serves. So without further ado, I want her to tell her story. Please welcome our endorsed candidate, Hala Ayala. Hey, Hala.
Hey, Glynda. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited about this conversation because literally I've got little water to be able to hear a little more. I want people to hear your story. So I want to start with, tell us your story. Who is Hala?
Well, Hala has a big story, and I'm happy to tell you. You know, I serve in the 51st District, as you said. I am a national security, cybersecurity specialist, which is, you know, some may say a little timely, but, you know, hey, you know, it is now the thing to be. But I'm a lifelong Virginian, and I've dedicated my life to public service. And I felt for a long time that politicians didn't look like me or you or anyone in our, Virginia. It just had one kind of feel, if you will. But that changed. You know, when Barack Obama came to my district in 2008, I decided to get engaged. I was tired of not being seen or heard as an Afro-Latina woman. We didn't see a lot of diversity in politics, especially in the highest echelons of offices, like president, like vice president, like lieutenant governor of Virginia or governor of Virginia. And I just felt like he spoke to me, especially when he said, if something needs fixing, lace up your shoes and do some organizing. So that's what I did. He said, if you're disproportionately disappointed by your elected officials, grab a clipboard, get your sneakers on, get some signatures. And that's what I did. So in the House, I was elected in 2017. I quit my job as a national security specialist of 17 years with Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Coast Guard. And I decided to cash in my 401k. And with $68 in my bank, I won my seat. And I just share this with you because I come from humble beginnings. I lost my father when I was 2. He was murdered. My mother remarried to an Air Force vet. And it was troublesome. It was challenging. We didn't have money. We didn't have money for me to go to school. When I became pregnant with my son, I worked at a gas station making $5.25 an hour, didn't have a safety net. And so, when you have tragedy early on in your life, expectations seem to be set, right? You seem to have not higher standards or goals for yourself because the deck has already been stacked against you. And so I didn't think I was going to live this long to even be here today. But running for office really showed me that we can all have a seat at the table versus being on the menu, women especially. And when I decided to run in 2017 again, it was that spirit of having the Barack Obama voice and spirit and hope and change. And when Trump got elected, it was more or less I had to do something. I couldn't just sit on the sidelines. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And I was sort of afraid, to be honest with you, because women of color did not always have a space in elected office. So I was putting in risk. I was putting skin in the game. We got elected. We made history. I was the first Afro-Latina woman, the first Black woman, brown woman to be elected to this House of Delegates in this district. And, we increased our representation in the House. And this was historic. One, we had voices, women, and the historic number of women to ever be elected in one election cycle. So we've done our work. We've expanded Medicaid. I became the chief deputy whip, which is sort of like the Jim Clyburn of the House, ushering and transformative pieces of legislation. And for the first time, we've gotten endorsements by Governor Northam, Speaker Fillercorn, Leader Herring. Now, in this, the 400 year, I just want to put context to this, Glynda, is that Virginia has never, in the 400 years, the oldest legislative body in the country, ever had a woman speaker. We now have one, the first Jewish woman speaker. We now have the first African-American woman, Black woman leader of the House. 400 years. And now we're talking about doing the same here in Virginia. This is transformative. We have an opportunity to elect women to the highest offices, women of color, Black women to the highest offices and facilitate that change. And I feel like, we've done something here in the United States with the election of Kamala Harris, the first African-American woman or Jamaican American woman and Asian American woman to be elected to the highest office in the land. We have an opportunity here in Virginia. And we're not always here to make statements, but it's time to create space, not just talk about it, but be about it. And this is the beauty of having Higher Heights with me along this journey to plant those seeds, because little girls are watching from home today, women who are thinking about running for office and know that they have support, that they have allyship, and that we are planting seeds for the future. So thank you for having me. We can talk more about my bio as we get down further, but I think being a part of Higher Heights lives up to not only its title, but its philosophies of lifting our voices to making sure we're included in the conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited about Virginia because Virginia in this moment is what Higher Heights was built for, right? One of our team members said yesterday that Higher Heights in this democracy is the house that Shirley Chisholm built. So we call like Shirley's house. And so being able to take the lessons learned about the Black women that have been running the state legislature as delegates and senators, but frankly now leading these chambers, and then seeing an election cycle where voters are looking at multiple choices to elect women of color, and Black women, is about moving the movement beyond the thank yous from 2020. That 2021 is certainly the opportunity to elect more Black women. And so to put into context for those watching, we've only elected 16 Black women on statewide executive offices in this country's history. We only have 6 Black women currently serving in that role. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But what I think you've shared in your bio is that you obviously are overqualified, but your lived experiences, you're like,
we're going to touch on that, Glynda. We've got to talk about that qualified.
Well, I will stop and I will hold my other tongue and stuff. So the notion that oftentimes women and women of color and Black women have to be twice, perceived as twice as better. But I mean, your background, you've shared from not only your community organizing, the work that you've done, but frankly, your education in like cybersecurity is a niche that needs to sit at a decision-making table at a time, as you know, when African-American women are being disproportionately attacked with disinformation and misinformation online, which is right along the lines of your training.
Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there, but let's talk about the word qualified. We have, in the 400 years of this body, and this is not a dig, this is just an observation, this is the reality, that we have cis white men, running the legislatures, and they are the decision makers, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And, even during my journey here, I'm met with, is she qualified enough? Does she have this? Does she have this? 4 out of the 5 last governors, I am qualified. I have more legislative experience, right? And this also in context to lieutenant governor's position in the one I am seeking. And the thing is that we have to overcome, to your points, all these barriers, these traditional thinking barriers that have really disenfranchised not only voters, but women from holding seats, higher seats. Right? It has been embedded in the DNA of our conversation, not just with men, but with women. Like, and so I'm of the belief system, you can't be what you can't see. Mm-hmm. Right? And we can't change these narratives by fighting the narratives with other words, right? Just with conversations. We have to put us in elected positions. So to your point, the lack of representation across state legislatures and leadership and diversity and women, we have a long way to go, but we are taking steps. We are making progress. We are, I think, the Virginia State House has come a long way since, 5 years ago and 4 years ago. This is the floor, not the ceiling, And so when we're talking about cybersecurity, we're bringing these lived experiences. Those often, whether our career experiences or our lived experiences, they get discounted in the conversation. And so I think we're at a point here in Virginia, we're at a fork in the road where we are celebrating these lived experiences. We do have to fight some of these narratives, but we are working very hard, even with our allies, to be outspoken about why they're supporting us, why they're here with us. And I think Governor Northam taking that step out, a leap of faith on a woman of color, has never been done. And that should be acknowledged and celebrated. But also the 2 women who have came out together and endorsed me, and all of our other endorsees who are walking with us. I think this brings truth to testament and truth to power and truth to how capable, that women, Black women are when given an opportunity.
And I want to touch upon the lived experience. Like when we have diverse decision-making tables, they make better decisions. And lived experience is the type of diversity that we need at our table. So yes, it's about ensuring that we have women at the decision-making table, women of color, Black women, but it's also the experiences that uniquely positions Black women to lead in this moment. In just listening to you tell your story, that you worked for $5.25. So knowing, having a champion to talk about, not like moving beyond what a minimum wage is, that at the end of the day, we want what our neighbors want. We want economically thriving, educated, healthy, and safe communities. And having someone that, ran a household at $5.25 is someone that is there that will be able to fight for the working families across this country. The fact that you took a leap of faith in your leadership, right? Cashed in your 401k, which was hard to work on in the first place, right? And I've been there where you like, I have a dream and you said, I forgot the cents, but you'd be like $68 and some change. That those are the types of like understanding that the policy and the budget priorities that you'll be fighting for is about that person, that neighbor, that woman of color, that Black woman who has $68 in her bank account. And finally, we've spent a lot of time, Hala, talking about this. And Maya Angelou's poem, Grandmothers, has this line that I've been saying about Kamala, right? Well, excuse me, Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm calling Hala now, but at one point, be like Lieutenant Governor. But she, that line says, "I come as one, but I stand as 10,000." And that's uniqueness of women of color and Black women in our leadership roles, because we stand with the lived experiences of the background, but particularly as it relates to what I think is one of your superpowers, right? Which is your multiple identities. You are a daughter of immigrants. You're, daughters of, like, when you talk about multiracial makeup, and that you're defined, and that you defined who you are. You don't allow other people to define who you are. So share a little bit about that superpower and how that you're going to bring that to your next level of leadership as Lieutenant Governor.
Absolutely. I think, I embrace all of my identities, very much so like Kamala did. And you've seen some of the hurdles she's had to overcome. I face some of the same things here in Virginia. But I think this is the superpower. We're bringing these identities to the table to make progress in our policies because we understand the impact to our community. It's hard to undo Jim Crow thinking that has been embedded in these conversations. For me, it's never you're Black enough, you're not white enough, you're not Latino enough, you're not this enough, you're not all of this enough. And I'm okay with that. Think the way you want, but you don't get to control my story. As I said in one excerpt of a tweet, I will not be erased. I will continue to push forth and fight for the policies that impact our communities. I think that is the substance in which I bring. We fight a lot in 2021. We had the woman who was elected to the highest office who had to fight these same battles. But we're going to continue to elect women to these offices to change that narrative, because that doesn't belong to anyone else but us. We get to choose how we speak about it. We get to choose how we talk about it. And we get to use that to empower other women to make those same choices as they look or seek higher office or leadership positions within their community, whether it's the CEO of a company, right? It is about, hopefully one day we'll get to the point where we're not taking on that oppressive mindset, those mindsets that we're there to divide us versus empower us. These are things that are not the substance of who we are. It is part of the journey. It's part of the conversation. And I think this is the beauty of what we're about to do here in Virginia. We're going to continue on this conversation and combat some of those thought forms that are not helpful to the goal, which is to move every Virginian, everyone in our country forward, especially now with COVID. We've got a lot of battles on the forefront of us. We have a lot of battles that we are fighting, from racism to sexism. We are fighting classism. We're, colorisms, all these isms, can be eradicated if we work together for a better, prosperous future, whether you live in Virginia, whether you live in Washington, D.C., whether you live in Washington State. It is a collective. And it's going to take it's, we all, I believe at the heart of each individual that we're working to be better and call these things out and stand up for others and be allies. But part of that means listening. That part of that means, joining the conversation and understanding where some of these crossroads, or these challenges that our communities face. And it's all about, making sure that we are in the room with the decision makers, to your earlier point, being able to lean in and saying, look, we are the advocates for our community and our voices. We cannot be left behind. Far too long, that has always been the case. And now we are in the position to be the last woman in the room with ever the governor or the president of the United States, whomever he or she may be.
And that's exactly the power of the office you're seeking. Can you share a little bit about your vision, if elected Lieutenant Governor, of some of the key issues that not only will you stand up as a independently, just FYI, independently elected Lieutenant Governor, but what are the issues that you will, be working to be the first and last in helping to push innovation and equity into the next governor of Virginia's administration?
Absolutely, Glynda. I think a lot of policies impact my, from my story and my lived experiences, they will be part of that journey. So for instance, healthcare, I was on public assistance, not once, but twice in my life. I understood what it was like to stand in a food line waiting for the box of cheese, that big can of peanut butter or whatever foods that we were going to be receiving from the time that we were standing in that line, the first of every month, or waiting for a food voucher. I bring those lived experiences. So I want to make sure that we look at, food equity in our systems and an inclusive economy to help every working family. Also healthcare. Again, healthcare is an essential part of my story because Medicaid saved my son's life. He almost died. I almost died having him. So not only within that healthcare realm, maternal mortality rates. And I carried legislation this year to really speak to that, as did some of my colleagues, in working to not only put a team together to research why we are dying at rates during whether it's before, we actually have our child and way after, and being heard and being seen and again, being helped. Also, invest in our communities and infrastructure to bring high-paying jobs and leverage technologies so that we better serve the people, that government better serves the people, and also working for equity and justice and opportunity, no matter of race, class, gender, sexual orientation. So we need to continue to fund our Medicaid. We need to continue to build physical infrastructures and digital infrastructures to that point of securing the cyberspace, but making sure that it's up to date so we are not vulnerable to attack, which attacks data of every Virginian. Also, making sure civil rights are protected and accountability and transparency, especially in uses of excessive force with our law enforcement, and which has led to the unjustifiable deaths of many Black men, Black women. So this is the high level top lines that I will continue to talk to the governor, again, whomever he or she may be. I want to be the last woman in the room to talk about the fears that I have for my children, the double standards in America, whether it's the standards in education, that system, or healthcare, that system, or our justice system, that system, and really bring those realities to the forefront. The fears that parents have when my daughter walks out of my house or she drives her car, I make her overly text, overly communicate. Or when, also my Black son goes to work, what's going to happen to him? And the struggles and the pains that he fights and the racism that he faces just on the front line of a cashier's register. It is going to take all of us, a village, to really change the inequities and bad history that America's had. It's not going to change overnight, but we can all be conscientious and intentional about the work that we do. And that's why the importance of my seat and the representation and the stories and the experiences, the fear, the anxiety, the pains that I'll bring into the space will be a voice for not just some of us, but all of us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that you are stepping into a role and currently governing in multiple crises, right? And the ability to govern about at the intersection of the economy, racism, inequity, pushing innovation. That if you're going to have healthy Virginians, meaning just not just like health as in actual health, but like a healthy Virginia, that is the intersection. And so one of the comments, one of the questions that was posed by one of our members is like, how do you even approach starting to change the culture and govern from the intersection of eliminating the isms?
I think it's just going to be about making sure our voices are heard. You can't change the way ideology is philosophies and perception and things that people have been taught. It's hard to undo those, but you're going to have to fight like hell, excuse my French, to make sure that those inequities are brought to the forefront of each of these conversations, right? And again, it's not just about sharing lived experiences. Is about what is the right policy decision for this. And it's going to have to be a raw conversation. We have to have these raw conversations about the challenges that we are facing in every policy and every policy decision that we are making. We've had a history of, making policy and maybe not taking in every consideration. And this is why representation matters. And so when you're fighting those isms, I'm not going to lie to you, I can't change this overnight. But every time we peel a layer away of the onion or that system and adding representation to every level of government, we are bringing good policy, good governance, and everybody wins.
And the approach of having an elected leader actually not comfortable enough to be able to talk about the isms and how it one affects your day-to-day life and your family's day-to-day life, but also how we can govern in a way that seeks to eliminate or lessen. Another question from a member talks a little bit about the stewardship of our elected leaders, and if elected lieutenant governor, what would be some of your approaches about being a good steward of Virginians' tax dollars as it relates to pushing for budget priorities that center your constituency?
Well, that's a big question because there's a lot of intersectional conversations that happen with just taxes and the approach. Again, it's setting forth priorities. The governor is going to set priorities. I'm the lieutenant governor. I have to be in the room to talk about those dollars and cents, which equal policies and impacts, right? So I need to have a real conversation about what's our budget, what we're going to do with it, and how we're going to allocate that funding. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be about me leaning in on the policies and priorities that I have as well, that will be representative of the communities that I work with, right? Whether it is a locality, whether it's an individual advocacy group, whether it is champion a certain issue that has been on the forefront of every Virginian's mind, it's going to be a priority for me to be vocal about my thoughts and opinions about how we should allocate that funding and using tax dollars wisely. So for instance, I have a passion about education and school. We can't call a world-class education if we're not funding it. If we're not giving our children the tools they need, whether it's broadband access, whether it's the tools to access the internet, whether it's paying our teachers, more than a livable wage. We should be treating them as doctors and presidents of the United States, because those are the seeds that are planted in our communities and will be fostering the future. Education is the equalizer, if you will. But also, our infrastructures in these school systems are outdated, right? We need to make sure we're taking an earnest approach about 50-plus-year-old schools who have cracked or leaky ceilings or an unstable or no HVAC system, and you're asking children to go to school. There's a lot of work that we have to do. And so allocating those fundings and being a good steward, I think has to do about the tabletop issues, the meat and potatoes, the things that impact every Virginian's day-to-day lives, and being a fighter for it. I've lived it. So for me, if I didn't have a job, where's the job? You know, if I don't have food, how do I get it? If I don't have affordable access to secondary education or post-secondary education, how can I afford it? And I think these are ways that we can work collaboratively together with the governor and talk about prioritizing those specific issues.
It is important to have a lieutenant governor that is going to champion the issues of working families across this country, across the state, that pushes innovation across the country by electing Hala. Like, why do you care if you're watching this and you don't live in Virginia? It is when you have transformative leadership in the states, it actually pushes innovation in work in other states. And I certainly believe, and Higher Heights certainly believes, that Hala is the type of transformative leadership that we want to see in lieutenant governors across this country. There's one more question around policy, and then I would love to shift to talk a little bit about the race. And so one of the questions was, you are a state legislator currently and seeking a statewide executive office. But one of your most important constituencies are veterans, right? And so this notion of, as we look to seek to bring more of our troops home from Afghanistan and across the country, how do we best, one, advocate to ensure that we're bringing our troops home safe and back to their communities? And how do we best organize and provide the resources from a state perspective to be able to receive and support them once they're at home to re-enter into our community, in our states?
I know that we at the state level already are very collaborative with the federal government, right, to allocate funding and supportive services and, secondary services, right? When you are a veteran, there's some nuances there. We have I'll talk to it from a personal level. I have a lot of veterans in my district, and we've had a lot of roundtables. And when the veterans come home, there's challenges that they may be facing, whether it's mental health, whether it is finding a job, or just transitioning back home. And so all of these services, or wraparound services and supportive infrastructure for our veterans, are very important. So we will continue to work to fund them. But I think the more important question for me is what I'll do to work with those veterans, because this would be like me going to someone's district and telling them what they need to do. I'm a firm believer that we need to take a collaborative approach and talk with our veterans. What is it that you need, and how can I help? And my door will always be open. I'm very authentic. I won't always get these questions accurate or right. And this is why the importance of that tribe, that village, and being collaborative is always so insightful and helpful. It has been in my career now as a legislator, to make sure that I'm making the right decisions. I'm not a veteran. I've worked with the military most of my life, and I've seen firsthand some of the transition issues that are being faced. We had a big community. Virginia strived to end homelessness for the veterans that are here and those who were serving at one time, maybe 10 plus years, and now are living behind a community store or a parking lot and have 10 cities. These are individuals that have given their life to service and to our country. We owe them a debt of gratitude for us to be here and have the freedoms that we are afforded every day. We have to definitely do better by our veterans. So the work that we've done here in Virginia is the floor, not the ceiling. And we will continue to fight for our just brave soldiers, men and women, who have sacrificed their lives every day for us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all who dropped comments in. But people are asking the question, so what do we need to do? What does this race look like? What does this primary look like? What are your obstacles, challenges, and what are your greatest opportunities to win this June in the primary? And our research points to that the general electorate, women of color, Black women, know that if we get Hala through the primary, that there's a general electorate. I want to do the electric slide, electorate. So general voters that want a new generation of leaders, and they believe that new generation or that next generation of leader is women, that they're women of color. And so they're ready to vote for Hala in the general. But what do we need to do, and a little dynamics about this primary? And then we'd love to hear your thoughts about what it looks like in the if you are advanced, what do we need to do, and what does the general election look like for you?
Well, I'm going to be a little partisan here, Glynda. So I will tell you first and foremost, in order we can make history here by electing the first Afro-Latina to the state legislature, the first Black and brown woman to this legislature. And we can do so by supporting me at Hala, HALA, for Virginia.com, and donating, because it does take a village to get us across the finish line. We have in the House, and this is the partisan part, Hala from the block. I saw that comment. You know it, honey. Let me get my thoughts back together. Let's give
Hala from the block, Hala from the state legislature.
Hala, look, y'all have me acting silly. But I will tell you that, Democrats have had the majority for 2 years, and this is the most important election that we have, because all the progresses we made, and I've carried some legislation like same-day voting registration. We're the first Southern state to do that. We voted to legalize marijuana, and so on and so forth can be undone in one election cycle. So not only do we have to keep the House, we have to keep the trifecta, which is the governor, lieutenant governor, the seat I'm running for, and the AG. So this is going to be the battle for, and we're the only game show in town besides New Jersey right after a presidential election. And we're going to need all the help we can get on TV, to continue to communicate to voters, to volunteer. I know one of my team members is on, Veronica will drop our information, how you can donate and how you can volunteer. This is definitely, even if we get through when we get through, let me plant those seeds, the primary, that this is going to be a full-on battle with our Republican opponents. They want to dismantle our voting systems. They want the progress that we've made. We went from 49th to number 2, and the first Southern state to do so. And now we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So this is one of many hurdles we will have to overcome. And it's definitely going to take a village. And vote, because this is important. If you live in Virginia, make sure you're registered to vote. You can start early voting now, but make sure you know when to vote and where to vote. So go to the State Board of Elections. You can go to my website, and we have links there, but make sure you vote. So those are the many ways you can help our campaign.
And if you know folk in Virginia, make sure they're making a vote plan to vote. Oftentimes, Virginia is the state that people go, oh, it's off election year, and Virginia is voting. No, there is no off election year. There are major elections that deal with your day-to-day lives every year. And certainly this is not only a race to watch, this is the race to get involved in. And so we hope our members and those who are watching that we will activate for Hala to make her the lieutenant governor, Hala. And we will be hosting with her campaign opportunities for you to make phone calls to voters from your house, from your couch. It's nice out, even from your backyard. And so we need to join together and help elect Hala over the next how many days? 28. Am I right?
We're
I've been doing it like less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days. Yeah.
So there's work to be done. And so the last question that I'll allow you to address, because it's a great closer. Someone wants to know what does transformative leader What does transformative leadership look like in your role? I will tell you, you are looking at transformative leadership in Hala Ayala, but I will let her tell you in her own words about her vision for Virginia and her approach to ensuring that she helps to move Virginia to higher heights.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And I think, when you are looking at transformation, we would be transformative in the many ways we've already touched on in this hour. But I think my philosophies would be, transformative, meaning that we would work to, have a continued open door policy. We would continue to be authentically us, because in politics, sometimes you just don't see that, but being Hala from the block, you're going to give full on authenticity. Another thing is, I think, our style of leadership, where I don't claim to know it all. I won't claim to know it all. And I will be authentically to that, but I'll work very hard to figure it out and work with you and do my homework and just lead by an example. When you have everyday working individuals, we want what's best for our Commonwealth. So you'll get a woman that's going to not only work twice as hard, but 4 times as hard to make sure we get everything across the finish line. And I think the transformational part will be part of the seeds that we plant. Again, you can't be what you can't see. Transformation sometimes doesn't happen right away, but just electing the first ensures that we're not the last. So that is part of the journey of transformation. I like to look at it as a metamorphosis. There are steps that will happen. And I think even throughout my career as lieutenant governor, besides the leadership style that I'll take on and the authenticity I'll take on, and maybe a little sassiness as well, but just the mere representation will be part of those seeds that we plant for decades to come.
Well, thank you so much for spending the evening with us in our She's Got Next series, and certainly Hala Ayala from the block will be the next Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. But she needs your help. And so we hope you will join Higher Heights in ensuring that we are adding to the numbers of Black women who are elected to statewide executive office. And so she will be joining New Jersey Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver and Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stranton. And so thank you for joining us tonight. This is the type of programming that if you are a member of the Political Home for Black Women, you have an opportunity to be in dialogue and engage with amazing leaders like Hala from across the country, running and serving and leading on the local, state, and national level. So thank you again for in the spirit of Shirley Chisholm being unbought and unbossed and stepping off the sidelines and running for higher office. So we have less than 30 days to make history. And we look forward to doubling down and making sure not only do you lead in June, but that you will run, win, and lead in November of 2021. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we look forward to continuing to build a better democracy by helping Black women lead. Take care.
Thank you, Glynda.